Hi teacher, my name is Estefania Santander and today I will share about grammar functions and give tips for teach objects. First of all, we must be clear that they are the subject and we use the words subjects to talk about the pronouns, nouns or noun phrase that does the action of verb. In English, the subject is usually before the verb. For example, John arrived. John is a proper noun. John is also the subject of this sentence because John is the person who arrived. So he is the person who did the verb. The subject of a sentence is an important structural element which plays a significant role in many grammatical relations. The term grammatical relation refers to the syntactic relationships that exist in a clause between a noun predicate, a verb phrase, subject and predicate, obviously, or between subject and direct object. In the same way, they use the objects to talk about the things or person that the verb is done to or who receives the verb. It can be a noun phrase, a pronoun, or a longer complex object, which is modified in a similar way to the complex subject. For example, I love chocolate, where chocolate is the object for this sentence. Only a transitive verb can have an object. An intransitive verb never has an object. For example, we saw the man was house my brother built, where the man was house my brother will is the object for this sentence. Remember that pronouns can have subjective and objective case, like this: me, your, him, her, it, us, and them. Now, the objects are classified in direct objects, indirect objects, and oblique objects. The direct object of a verb is the thing being acted upon, that is the receptor of the action. For example, play the guitar, where play is the verb of this sentence and the guitar is the direct object. Now, the direct object always go along with the verb. The tips for teaching direct objects in the classroom is to teach students to identify the verbs in the sentence. It is very important that the students, before identifying the subject and predicate, identify the verb in the case. Another tip is teach them the formula to ask the question. As for example, in the case of direct objects, the what or won't is used after the action verb. The indirect object of the sentence is the reshaping of the direct object. The direct object is the thing being acted on by the verb. For example, Paula passed her father the parcel, where passed is the verb, her father is the direct object, and the parcel is the indirect object for this sentence. The tips for teaching indirect objects in the classroom is that the students learn to identify the indirect objects in the sentence. And how are going to do it? Very simple. To find the indirect objects, first the direct object must be found, and we do it by finding the verb and asking what after that. They ask who or what he received it. Another tip could be letting them know the cases of indirect objects that are found. For example, there are indirect objects preceded by to or for. Direct objects, usually be people. Transitive verbs have direct and indirect objects. Verbal objects, they may have direct and indirect objects, etc. Remember that the difference between who and whom is that whom is used as an objective case and who is used as an objective pronouns. This is very important to learn to differentiate between who and what. The oblique object is also receives the direct object. Therefore, the oblique object or object of a preposition is similar to the indirect object in what function is concerned. The difference is that the oblique objects occur in a prepositional phrase. For example, she wrote a message to Sam, where Sam is the oblique object of this sentence. The tips for teach oblique objects is for students to learn to differentiate between the indirect object and the oblique object. And their difference is that the oblique objects occur in a prepositional phrase. And something very important is to teach them the reason why oblique object or object of prepositions should be learned. And these are, for example, the use of whom in a correct way. And another is to be sure that the subject in the verb agree, since the object of a preposition cannot be the subject of a verb. So why do you think they could help students better understand these types of objects? Well, first of all, I think these types would be very helpful. Since for them to understand grammar, they must first understand the types of objects that there are. Then after studying, then comes practice where they can improve, and above all, it is very essential to learning English as a foreign language. So, thank you so much, dear teacher.